Today, the story we want to share with you is about a mysterious encounter between the Galactic Empire and ghostly warships, ancient machines created to observe and judge civilizations. When a ghost ship appears in deep space, everything changes, and the Galactic Empire faces an undeniable truth. Can they survive the judgment of these unseen entities, or will they be erased for a mistake of their past? Now, prepare yourself for an exciting, unpredictable space adventure, where humanity faces its final choices to determine their fate in this vast universe. The stars hung suspended in the void of space, their distant glow barely illuminating the endless, dark expanse of Sector 7. The Empire's patrol ship, the HFY Nightclaw, glided silently through the blackness. Its sleek, angular frame cut through the emptiness, a beacon of cold precision. Inside, the crew was calm, at least, outwardly. The ship was designed for missions of observation, meant to patrol these far-flung regions of space, far from the hustle of Empire's core territories. Captain Relic stood at the front of the bridge, his cold eyes locked on the black expanse through the large observation window. His fingers idly traced the edge of his glass, sipping the cold caf, an odd blend of alien spices that warmed his insides. The crew, a seasoned group of professionals, moved about their duties with quiet precision. There was a quiet rhythm to the operations, a comfortable monotony that Relic had learned to rely on. The stillness of space outside mirrored the silence within the ship. Then, the calm was shattered. "Captain," a voice rang out from the sensor station. It was Vin, the young sensor officer, his voice trembling with uncertainty. He was scanning the area, the silent hum of his console the only sound as he reviewed the data coming in from the deep space sensors. "What do you have, Vin?" Captain Relic's voice cut through the still air, a mixture of authority and curiosity in his tone. There was a long pause, the hum of the ship amplifying the tension in the room. Then, with a sharp intake of breath, Vin spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something strange, very fast, heading our way. No signature. It just moves." The entire crew turned to face the screen. For a moment, there was nothing, just the vast, empty stretch of space, dotted with distant stars. But then, something appeared. It was a shape. Dark. Long. It seemed to stretch across the screen like a shadow, flickering in and out of existence. There were no lights, no visible form to this entity, just a fleeting distortion, a presence that was barely there, yet undeniably real. "What is that?" the bridge officers whispered, eyes wide in disbelief. The shape moved too quickly to track, its sleek silhouette sliding across the screen with unnatural speed. A pulse of energy seemed to radiate from it, yet there was no engine signature, no sign of propulsion. It moved with a fluidity that suggested intelligence, like it was aware of their gaze, watching them just as much as they were watching it. And then, without a trace, it was gone. Vanished as if it had never been there. "It's gone," Vin said, his voice taut with confusion. "I can't track it. It just disappeared. No jump detected, no cloak. It was there, and then nothing." Captain Relic's mind raced. Every ship in the galaxy, no matter how advanced, left some sort of trace, heat, electromagnetic signals, engine signatures. But this was clean. Too clean. "What are we dealing with here?" Relic muttered under his breath. Relic quickly turned toward Lieutenant Sara, who sat at the communications console. She had been monitoring the situation, ready to hail the unknown ship if it came into contact. She flicked a switch and spoke into the comms with the authority of someone who had dealt with countless situations like this before. "Unknown vessel, you are in Empire space. Identify yourself." There was nothing. No response. Silence stretched across the bridge, heavy and thick. "Try again, Sora." Lieutenant Sora didn't hesitate, repeating the message. "This is Empire Patrol Vessel HFY Nightclaw. Respond, or we will." Suddenly, the lights on the bridge flickered, just for a moment, and every system on the ship stuttered. The hum of the engines died. The screens turned black. For 3 long seconds, there was nothing but the crushing, suffocating silence of space. Sora stared at her console, her fingers frozen above the keys. "Sir, we lost all comms for 3 seconds. It wasn't jamming. Everything just went dead." The crew looked at each other in growing unease. Something was wrong. Something was out there. But what? Relic's eyes narrowed. Get a scout ship ready. Track it. Find out where it went. Time passed in silence, as the crew's minds raced with questions, their every instinct screaming that this was no ordinary encounter. They had made contact with something that wasn't supposed to exist, something that wasn't supposed to move like that, without leaving a trace. The Viper 1 launched, a sleek, smaller vessel designed for high-speed pursuit and tracking. Piloted by Commander Jor-El, a seasoned officer known for his skills in deep space reconnaissance, it was the Empire's best chance at solving this mystery. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then, nothing. No comms from Viper 1. No contact. Viper 1, report. Silence. Viper 1, come in. Do you copy? Relic called again, his voice rising with concern. No answer. Vin, track their last signal. Vin typed furiously at his console. After a few tense moments, he spoke again, his voice quiet with the weight of the unknown. The last signal came from grid F-19. After that, nothing. No crash alert. No wreckage. Just silence. Relic's gaze hardened. The ship vanished. And now our scout ship is gone too. The crew sat in stunned silence. The weight of the situation pressed down on them, thick and suffocating. The quiet of space, once so peaceful, had become their worst nightmare. The heavy silence inside the war room was almost suffocating. Tall, darkened windows allowed a fleeting glimpse of the stars beyond, distant and cold. High Admiral Kellen stood at the head of the room, his broad shoulders hunched as he studied the holographic map before him, eyes narrow with concentration. The map displayed a vast grid of the Empire's controlled sectors, silent now, empty of the usual hustle and movement. Around him, the commanders and officers sat in tense silence. On the far side of the room, Intelligence Officer Mora held a small datapad, her fingers scrolling through ancient records that seemed as cold and unsettling as the data on the screens. What do we know? Kellen's voice broke the silence, as sharp and commanding as ever. He didn't look up from the map, but the weight of his words made it clear he was no longer calm. Mora's fingers paused mid-swipe, and she slowly raised her gaze to meet his. There are records, from before the Great Expansion, she began, her voice steady but laced with a quiet unease. Ancient relics, war machines designed to awaken only when provoked. Kellen's brow furrowed as he turned toward her, his mind piecing together the fragments. Are you telling me this is some kind of ancient weapon? A machine left behind by an extinct species? But why would it target us now? Mora's voice dropped to almost a whisper as she spoke again, her tone far more cautious. The records mention creations, machines that were meant to observe. They never act like ordinary machines. They're not scanning or probing, they simply watch. They have no need for communication. They are waiting. A chill crept across Kellen's spine as he processed her words. Watching. Waiting. The implications were chilling. It's not a new weapon, Mora continued, her fingers tapping the datapad, flipping through more pages of ancient reports. Whatever this is, it's not alive in the way we understand. It doesn't have a purpose like ours, to dominate or conquer. It just observes, and judges. Kellen turned his attention back to the screen, the cold stars outside staring back at him as if mocking his power. What do we do now? If it's just watching us, is it even a threat? The war room felt colder. Mora's voice was quiet, almost reluctant, as if acknowledging the fear that now lingered in the room. I'm afraid we've only seen the beginning. More patrol ships were dispatched to Sector 7, each equipped with the latest sensors and the most advanced technology the Empire had ever created. Ships like the ESV Vanguard and ESV Scorpion, armed with weapons capable of destroying entire planets, slowly crossed the sector. But the deeper they went into that part of space, the more unsettling the journey became. On the Vanguard, Commander Jor-El was leading the search. His ship's engines hummed quietly as it sliced through the empty expanse, but the air aboard the vessel was thick with tension. The crew, usually calm and disciplined, spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously to the empty space outside. "Commander," said a sensor officer from the console, his voice barely audible, "there's nothing here. No anomalies. No strange readings. The space feels wrong." Jor-El's eyes hardened. He stood tall, peering through the observation window, his breath steady despite the growing sense of dread. "Keep scanning," he said, his voice calm, though there was an edge to it. "We can't let our guard down." Minutes turned into hours, and still, nothing came. No signs of the shadowy ship, no trace of the disappearance of Viper 1, only the haunting silence of the universe around them. The longer they stayed, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. "It feels like we're being watched," said one of the officers, their voice trembling, unable to hide their unease. Back at Empire Command, Mora and Kellen stared at the screens, tracking the movements of the patrol ships. The reports came in one by one, each saying the same thing: no sign of the unknown vessel. Mora's face had grown pale. "The more we send out there, the less we understand. There's nothing to detect. It's as if the space itself is avoiding detection." Kellen gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "It's too quiet." His words hung in the air like a warning. "Too still." Mora nodded slowly. "It's an absence that's felt, not seen. Every ship we send out goes further into the unknown. The data we receive, it doesn't make sense. It's as if the fabric of space itself is distorting." A holographic map showed Sector 7's unchanging, barren stretch. No movement, no anomalies, just an endless void. But something was wrong. The silence was not natural. On the Scorpion, the sensors flared to life, their alarms blaring. Commander Teller rushed to the front of the bridge, her sharp eyes scanning the readouts. "What is it?" she demanded. "Commander, something's happening to the readings," said the lead sensor officer. "There's a distortion, something invisible, like the very space around us is bending." Teller stepped forward, her breath quickening. Could it be the unknown ship? The officer shook his head, his face ashen. "No, ma'am. It's not moving like a ship. It's almost like the space itself is warping." The crew watched in stunned silence as the stars outside the viewport seemed to shift in the most unnatural of ways. A ripple moved across the emptiness, like the fabric of space was being twisted, stretched in ways no one had ever seen. The Scorpion shuddered under the pressure, as though something was pushing against it from all sides. "We're not alone out here," Teller whispered, gripping the console tightly. "And whatever is out there, it's not just a ship. It's something older. Something far more dangerous." The silence was broken only by the sound of heavy breathing from the crew, all of them staring at the screens as the space around them seemed to shift again. And in that shifting, a terrifying thought slowly began to form in Teller's mind. It was not just watching them, it was testing them. The fear was real now. Something ancient, something far beyond their understanding, was out there. And the Empire had no idea how to fight what they couldn't see, couldn't touch, and couldn't even comprehend. The Empire's fear grew with every passing moment, each new report coming back with nothing, yet with everything left unsaid. This shadow, this presence in the void, wasn't just something to be feared. It was something that could break their reality. Something that had been watching for centuries. And the more they searched, the more they realized the Empire was playing a game it couldn't even begin to understand. The unknown was closing in, and the silence grew louder. The Empire's fleet, a formidable force of battle-hardened warships, was stationed at the edge of Sector 7, a silent and desolate stretch of space that had now become the heart of their investigation. Commander Teller, an experienced officer known for her calm under pressure, stood at the front of the bridge of the ESV Daggerfall, staring at the vast emptiness that surrounded them. The crew, alert and focused, moved about their stations, their eyes flickering toward the distant stars beyond. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was the only sound, a soothing rhythm that belied the tension hanging in the air. Every officer was aware of the gravity of their mission, to track and destroy the mysterious force that had claimed the lives of their scouts and defied every measure of detection. The unknown was closing in, and this was their first true confrontation. But the stillness of space was deceiving. Teller's fingers grazed the edge of the console, her eyes darting back and forth between the control panel and the distant dark expanse. Keep your eyes sharp, she said, her voice steady, though the weight of the task ahead made her words heavier than usual. Suddenly, a ripple appeared across the sensors, an anomaly so subtle that it almost felt like an optical illusion. At first, it was nothing more than a blip on the radar. But then, it grew. The dark shape, too fast and too fluid, flickered in and out of existence like a shadow brushing against the fabric of reality itself. "What is that?" Tellerer muttered, squinting at the screen. Her sensor officer Pin worked quickly at his console, his fingers flying over the controls. I don't know, Commander. It's like it's not even there. No heat signature, no mass. It's moving so fast it's almost a blur. The shape was growing clearer, but it wasn't solid. It was almost like space itself was bending around it. Pin's fingers hovered over the sensors in confusion. It's gone. No trace. No readings at all. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the shape vanished, leaving nothing but a disturbing, unnatural stillness. "What's happening?" Tellerer demanded, her voice rising. She shot a glance at the crew, her eyes narrowing as unease spread across the bridge like wildfire. Pin looked up, his face pale, his voice shaky. "There's nothing. It's just gone. No debris, no wreckage. It's like it never existed. Not a single trace." The tension in the air thickened, pressing down on the crew. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every officer on the bridge felt the weight of the unknown. Whatever this was, it was beyond their understanding. Tellerer turned her attention to the long-range communications screen. The feed flickered briefly before a new signal came through. It was from the ESV Lanceblade, one of the other ships in the fleet. "This is Lanceblade. We've encountered the same thing. We're under attack. The lights are out, our systems are malfunctioning, we can't see it, but we know it's there." The voice over the comms crackled, filled with panic. "Please advise." Tellerer's hands clenched into fists. The Lanceblade, one of the Empire's finest ships, had been attacked, just like the scout ships. But this was different. There was no sign of battle, no impact, no explosions. Just disappearance. "Get a visual on Lanceblade, now." Tellerer ordered, her voice cutting through the panic that was threatening to rise. The visual display switched to a view of the Lanceblade. For a moment, everything looked calm, too calm. But as the camera zoomed in, the ship's exterior appeared almost wrong. The lights flickered like dying stars, and the hull of the ship seemed to warp unnaturally, as though it was being pulled in multiple directions at once. "This isn't possible," Pin murmured, watching the data flicker across his screen. "The hull's integrity, it's like it's being stretched, but there's no gravitational anomaly. It shouldn't be happening." The crew stared at the screen in stunned silence. This was no longer just a ship under attack. Something far more sinister was at play. The Lanceblade had become a victim of something they couldn't even comprehend. The shape, the shadow, it wasn't a ship, it wasn't a weapon, it was something older, something that moved with purpose, testing the Empire's might. Tellerer's mind raced. What was it? And why now? The unknown force had not only destroyed one of their finest scout ships, but now, it had attacked the Lanceblade without a single shot fired, without even a sign of battle. It wasn't a battle, it was a judgment. "Commander," a voice broke her thoughts. It was one of the communications officers. "We're receiving another signal. It's from the Lanceblade." But before the officer could finish, the feed flickered again. And then, silence. The comms were dead. The Lanceblade's final plea for help was cut short. No more signals came through. "We lost contact," Pin said, his voice tight. "No response, no power. The Lanceblade is gone." The entire bridge was silent. The air felt thick, heavy. No one moved. No one spoke. They all knew it, this was not just a threat. It was something otherworldly, something they were powerless to stop. The force was beyond their reach, moving faster than they could react, outpacing their technology, slipping through their detection like sand through an outstretched hand. Teller's voice broke through the oppressive silence, cold and commanding. "Prepare to move. We're going after it." The crew sprang into action, but even as the ship powered up, a dark, familiar feeling settled over them. Whatever force they were about to encounter wasn't like any enemy they had ever faced. This was not a battle of weapons and strength, it was a battle of something far deeper, something cosmic, that tested their very existence. And it was watching. The hidden message the war room at Empire High Command was dimly lit, the faint glow of the holographic map casting airy reflections on the faces of Admiral Kellen and Intelligence Officer Mora. They stood side by side, studying the data on the floating screens, their faces tight with unease. The sleek, digital representations of the Empire's sectors flickered in a constant, methodical rhythm, but their focus was elsewhere, on something far more disturbing. Mora held a datapad in her hands, the ancient records displayed across the screen in front of her, each word, each symbol imbued with a sense of foreboding. She flipped through the pages, her fingers pausing over certain lines. It wasn't the first time she'd read these records, but now, with the ghost ship's presence looming over them, they took on a new, darker significance. Kellen's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, his arms crossed. "What have you found, Mora?" His voice was firm but filled with a quiet urgency. Mora tapped the screen, bringing up a new segment of the text. "There are records, from before the Great Expansion," she began, her voice steady but betraying a hint of dread. "Ancient weapons, machines built not to wage war, but to observe. They were designed to judge civilizations, and they awaken when a species grows too rapidly, or when they become too aggressive." Kellen's brows furrowed as he processed her words, the weight of the revelation settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. "Weapons that judge civilizations?" His voice dropped to a murmur. "But why? What do they want from us?" Mora's face hardened as she scrolled through more of the ancient texts, her fingers pausing over a particular passage. She looked up at Kellen, her gaze intense. "It's not just a weapon. It's a judgment system." Kellen stepped back, his mind racing to understand what he was hearing. "A judgment system? So, it judges us?" "Yes." Mora's voice was low, almost reverent as she repeated the chilling truth. "It chooses who survives, and who is erased." The room seemed to grow colder with the weight of her words. The air itself felt thick, as if it was filled with something unseen, pressing down on them, suffocating them. For a long moment, Kellen said nothing. He turned his back to the map, staring out into the dark expanse of space as if seeking answers in the cold, empty void. The realization struck him with the force of a meteorite hitting the planet's surface. This wasn't just a threat. This wasn't some rogue ship, some stray anomaly. The ghost ships, their presence here, their ability to erase entire fleets without a trace, was part of something far larger, something ancient. It wasn't a weapon designed for war, it was a force of nature, a system built to ensure the survival of the galaxy by erasing anything deemed unworthy. Kellen turned back to Mora, his eyes filled with determination. "How do we stop it?" he demanded. But Mora didn't have an answer. She only shook her head, her expression grim. "We don't know." She paused, her fingers tracing the ancient text once more, her mind clearly trying to piece together the scattered fragments of knowledge she had uncovered. "We've never faced something like this before. There are no records of anyone surviving an encounter with these machines." Back in the fleet, the presence of the ghost ship, an entity that had now been identified as part of an ancient judgment system, cast a long, dark shadow over the command structure. Kellen and Mora weren't the only ones growing desperate. The entire Empire was on edge, a rising sense of panic beginning to spread through the ranks. The patrols that had been sent out to confront the mysterious ships returned with reports of eerie silence, ghostly anomalies that couldn't be detected, and most disturbingly, entire ships vanishing without a trace. In the quiet of the war room, Kellen and Mora's conversation turned to the fleets themselves. "A fleet of these ghost ships is approaching," Mora whispered, her words carrying the weight of impending doom. "They are not just watching, Kellen. They're preparing to cleanse the galaxy." The word cleanse hung in the air, a word that was at once terrifying and foreign, filled with a strange finality. It wasn't about defeating the Empire, or even about capturing their worlds. The ghost ships weren't here for conquest, They were here for something else entirely, a judgment of civilizations too dangerous to exist, too aggressive, too unchecked in their expansion. Kellen's hands clenched at his sides, his fists tightening as the full scale of the situation became clear. "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice low and controlled, though his mind was spinning. "Not long," Mora replied, her voice thick with the gravity of her words. "The fleet is moving at an incredible speed. Within weeks, they'll reach the Empire's core systems. And once they're there, it's over." For a moment, the room fell silent again. The soft hum of the ship's systems, the quiet movements of the officers outside the room, all of it seemed insignificant in the face of the immense unknown now approaching. The Empire had always been strong, always maintained an iron grip on its territories, but this was a different kind of war. One that didn't rely on weapons or tactics, but on something far older, something that no fleet could ever prepare for. Mora's eyes never left the ancient records, her fingers still tapping at the datapad as she flipped through more of the texts. "There's more," she said quietly, though her voice had a hollow, distant quality now. "It says that when the machines arrive, they never leave until their judgment is complete." Kellen's expression hardened, his gaze fixed on the screen. "So, we're at their mercy." "Not mercy." Mora's voice was almost mechanical now, as if the weight of the truth had stolen her humanity. "They don't care for mercy. They're not here to kill us. They're here to decide if we deserve to live." The finality of her words settled over the room like a shroud. The Empire, powerful and expansive, was now facing something that could destroy it, not with weapons or warships, but with an irreversible, cosmic judgment. And there was no escaping it. Once the ghost ships had made their decision, it would be too late. Kellen closed his eyes, taking in a slow, deep breath. When he opened them again, they were cold, focused, ready for the next step. "We need to understand what we're up against," he said, his voice full of determination. "If there's a chance, any chance, we need to find it. We fight the only way we can, by uncovering the truth about these machines and what they're really looking for." Mora nodded, her gaze unwavering. "And we need to stop them before the galaxy is cleansed." The war room had become a place of quiet resolve, the officers around them now fully aware that this wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for existence itself. The ghost ships weren't just attacking the Empire. They were deciding the fate of the galaxy. And the Empire's only hope was to uncover the deep space secrets hidden within the stars before it was too late. The ship, Odyssey, drifted alone in the inky void of deep space, its hull battered and worn from centuries of neglect. Covered in a thick layer of frozen dust, it seemed to be nothing more than a ghost of a forgotten era, a relic of a time long past. The lights inside flickered erratically, casting long, flickering shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally against the cold, steel walls. Commander Telra floated silently through the corridors of the ship, her boots making no sound on the old metal floors. Every step she took seemed to disturb the quiet, as if the very ship itself were holding its breath, waiting for her to uncover the secrets it had kept hidden for so long. The air smelled of dust and age, an old ship, left to the ravages of time. Telra reached the bridge, the heart of the Odyssey. The control panels were faded, their once gleaming screens now dimmed and covered in a fine layer of grime. With a quick movement, she powered up the system, her eyes scanning the monitors. The screens hummed to life, displaying old, static-filled footage. At first, there was nothing, just the disjointed remnants of long-forgotten logs. But then, a flicker. A message, ancient and worn, appeared on the screen, and Telra's heart skipped a beat. It was the last transmission of Captain Ryland, the commander of the Odyssey. His voice crackled through the static, weary but resolute. "We did not fight. We did not run. We showed them who we were." Captain Ryland's voice echoed in the room, each word laden with meaning, each syllable dripping with a deep, unshakable truth. "We chose to stand before them with our hearts open, bare. We chose to be honest. And in that honesty, we found our salvation." Telra leaned forward, her brow furrowed as she absorbed every word. The message was simple, but profound. Humanity had learned, through their darkest moments, that survival wasn't about force or manipulation. It wasn't about fighting or running away. It was about showing their true selves, unafraid to confront their own flaws and mistakes. The Odyssey had encountered the Keepers, the ancient race of watchers who judged civilizations, deciding their fate based on a single, terrifying criterion: honesty. The humans, in their final desperate hours, had chosen to stand in the face of the unknown and reveal themselves. They did not fight the Keepers. They did not hide. Instead, they presented their truth, all of it, their wars, their mistakes, their hopes, and their dreams for a better future. And in doing so, they had been spared. The transmission ended, leaving a long, haunting silence in its wake. Telra's mind raced. If this was true, if humanity had survived because they had embraced the truth, then perhaps this was the key to saving the Empire from the same fate. Back at Empire Command, Telra wasted no time. She relayed the message from the Odyssey to Admiral Kellen and Mora. As the holographic projection of Captain Ryland's words flickered on the screen, a deep silence fell over the room. Kellen stood, his gaze fixed on the projection, his hands clasped behind his back. They survived because they showed their truth, he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Mora, standing beside him, nodded slowly, her expression grim. The Keepers, they don't care for war or weapons. They don't care about power or strength. They are looking for something else, something real, something true. Humanity, they survived because they refused to hide their truth. Kellen's mind churned with the implications. This was the key. If the Empire could find the courage to do the same, if they could reveal their true selves, perhaps they too could survive the judgment of the Keepers. But the truth was a dangerous thing. The Empire had built its strength on control, on power, and on subjugating weaker civilizations. The truth of their past, the wars they had waged, the destruction they had caused, those were not things they could easily reveal. Could they? Kellen turned to Mora, his voice low but firm. Prepare the broadcast. He paused, his face hardening. We will send them our truth. Our history, our mistakes, our wars. We will show them who we truly are. We will not hide anymore. The Empire's fleet hovered just outside the edge of Varnak Prime, the heart of their empire. The ghost ships, the Keepers, had not yet arrived, but their presence loomed, like a shadow stretching across the stars. The fear that had once been an undercurrent was now a palpable force, pushing against every officer, every soldier, every leader. The darkness was closing in. But now, with the message from the Odyssey in hand, the Empire had a choice to make: fight and potentially face annihilation, or reveal their truth and hope for mercy. Kellen stood on the command deck of the ESV Daggerfall, his face grim as the broadcast signal was prepared. Every officer aboard was aware of the significance of this moment. This would be the Empire's final stand. No more lies. No more pretense. Initiate the broadcast, Kellen ordered, his voice steady. The crew moved swiftly, powering up the transmission systems. The air on the bridge was thick with anticipation as the signal began to pulse out into the vast emptiness of space, toward the ghost ships that waited, just beyond the horizon. The broadcast would not be just a plea for survival. It would be an admission. A confession. The Empire would lay bare its history, the wars they had waged, the species they had destroyed, the countless lives lost in the name of power. They would show the Keepers their mistakes, their flaws, their regrets. But they would also show their hope for a better future, one where the Empire could change, evolve, and grow. A future where they could learn from their past. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was about to show its true face. The shadow of the ghost ship hung over Varnak Prime, the capital planet of the Empire. The massive planet, once teeming with life and energy, now stood still, as if holding its breath. The city's towering spires and sprawling megacities cast long shadows beneath the endless night, and the atmosphere, typically so vibrant, now seemed unnaturally quiet, as if the entire planet had been paralyzed by fear. The ghost ship, a shape so dark it seemed to absorb the very light around it, had appeared just outside the orbit of Varnak Prime. No fanfare, no fleet, just this singular entity that had driven the Empire to the brink of despair. It hovered motionless, its presence a stark contrast to the once thriving capital below. The stars around it twinkled in silent reverence, as though even the cosmos itself recognized the significance of the moment. On the surface, life continued, oblivious to the looming terror in the sky above. But in the Empire's high command, in every war room, every bridge, and every fleet station, the tension was palpable. The Empire's fate was now in the hands of something beyond their understanding. Kellen stood before the vast display in the war room, his eyes fixed on the flickering projection of the ghost ship. His face was calm, but his mind raced, torn between fear and hope. Behind him, Mora and Commander Telra watched in silence, their expressions unreadable, their breaths shallow. The truth was out. Now, the Keepers, the Ancient Watchers, had to decide. Is it going to attack? Mora whispered, her voice barely audible. No, Kellen answered, his voice unwavering. It's waiting. Watching. His fingers brushed the side of his face in deep contemplation. We've sent our message. Now it's their turn. The minutes stretched into hours. Every officer in the room was on edge, watching the screens, waiting for a response. The planet below seemed unaware of the impending fate that loomed above them. But in the command center, there was a sense that the galaxy had come to a standstill. Then, without warning, a faint hum vibrated through the command center. A strange frequency, unlike any they had heard before, rang through the speakers. The silence that followed felt almost sacred. A voice, not human, not machine, but something in between, emerged from the static. It was low, resonant, as though it carried the weight of millennia. The words echoed across the war room, reverberating through the walls. We see your truth. We will wait. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. The crew stood in stunned silence. There was no fear in the voice, no malice. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was simply an acknowledgement they had seen the truth. The ghost ship, its ominous presence still looming, began to move slowly. But this time, it wasn't heading toward the planet. Instead, it turned, its shape flickering once more as it vanished into the dark expanse of space. No weapons fired, no explosions. It simply disappeared, as if it had never been there at all. For a long moment, the room was still, the tension lifting only slightly as the ghost ship receded into the vastness of space. The fleet, once poised for battle, stood down. The Empire had been spared, not by force, but by the truth they had laid bare. In the aftermath, the weight of the moment settled into a new reality. The Empire was not destroyed. The ghost ships, the Keepers, they were not invincible. They had come looking for something real, something worth saving. And they had found it, not in weapons or might, but in honesty. The real force behind the Keepers is gone, Kellen said, his voice hoarse with the weight of what had transpired. They sought truth, and in our truth, they found something worth preserving. Humanity, we have judged you before, and we were wrong. Mora nodded, her expression one of quiet understanding. The galaxy has changed, Kellen. And so have we. There was no celebration, no immediate sense of victory. Instead, the Empire stood at a crossroads, humbled by the realization that survival was not always about overpowering your enemies or conquering new territories. Sometimes, survival came from something much simpler, the courage to show who you truly were. Outside, the stars began to shine brighter as the ghost ship vanished into the blackness, leaving behind a quiet peace. The cities of Varnak Prime continued to hum with life, unaware of the monumental shift that had just taken place. The Empire was still standing, but it was different now. It had learned a lesson in the most profound way possible. On the bridge of the ESV Daggerfall, Commander Telra stood at the viewport, her eyes fixed on the heavens above. For the first time in a long while, there was a sense of peace in her heart. The stars, once a reminder of the vast unknown, now seemed less daunting. They were no longer a symbol of fear, but of possibility. Telra thought of the humans and their message, the truth, the one thing that had saved them from destruction. She had seen the galaxy as a place of war, of conflict, of power. But now, there was hope that the galaxy could change, that the truth, no matter how painful, had the power to heal and to unite. A new dawn was breaking across the Empire. The threat was gone, not because they had fought, but because they had learned to be honest, to face their past and embrace their future. Telra took a deep breath and looked up at the stars again, a quiet smile forming on her lips. There was a new hope in her heart, a hope that, one day, the entire galaxy could learn the same lesson. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, the ghost ship waited. Its mission complete, for now, but its watch would never end. The galaxy was free, but the lesson had just begun. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey with HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. We hope today's story has given you moments of relaxation, reflection, and insight into love, war, and survival in the vast cosmos. Each story we share isn't just an adventure, it's also a lesson in honesty, courage, and the power of humanity in all circumstances. If you enjoyed stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so you never miss an upcoming video. Please leave your thoughts and comments below, we always love hearing from you. Thank you for being a part of our journey, and we wish you an amazing day ahead. See you in the next story.